You are listening to the Small Town Big Arts podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Kirshner, the CEO of the Academy Center of the Arts in Lynchburg, Virginia. In my own work as an arts leader, I have found it difficult to access resources for arts organizations and artists serving smaller communities. On each episode, Small Town Big Arts sets out to drive conversations and provide inspiration for those serving smaller communities through the arts. If you like what you hear, please rate and review us and share with your friends and colleagues who are working to promote the arts in smaller communities across America. You can also learn more by visiting us at smalltownbigarts.com. Well, I'm very excited to welcome back to the podcast Margaret Hancock, the Executive Director of the Virginia Commission for the Arts. Really fortunate to have her on this month. And the reason I'm bringing her back is because I'm right now, for my own organization, in the middle of a strategic planning process. And we tend to do 3-year strategic plans. And these strategic plans are really vital to our ability to create cohesion across the staff, moving everybody in the same direction, clearly identify what our needs are, where our weaknesses are, where our strengths are, all the rest of this in order to propel the organization forward. But one of the things that can happen very often for small organizations in smaller communities is the bandwidth for strategic planning can be really difficult. The bandwidth, the financial implications that it can be to hire a facilitator to execute something of this nature, as well as the individual bandwidth to be able to put the time and energy into what is necessary for a strategic plan. So the Virginia Commission for the Arts has done something really pretty extraordinary and really fantastic. And that is that they are on their site now. They've worked with SparkMill to create a resource for strategic planning. So, Margaret, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
And I think what I want to start is, I think it'd be really great for everybody to hear from, a grant-giving agency and your perspective on that. Why strategic plans and strategic planning is so important to the organizations that you all review and see in the state of Virginia.
Yes. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me back. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you today and also able to share this resource with your greater audience. Strategic planning is one of the things that we look at as an investor into how the organization is demonstrating and working towards operational excellence. So where do your mission and your vision and your objectives and your measurable outcomes, where do they all find this landing spot? And it's often the strategic plan. And I think sometimes large organizations think this is only for us because we have so many moving parts and we have so many individuals that support our mission, and we all need to be on the same page. But it's actually really meaningful for smaller organizations as well. And that's because if there's fewer voices at the table, they weigh a lot more. Those voices can carry. And so having this external resource. So it may be an internal document and it may be an internal facing thing, but it's an external resource outside of just those voices around the table. And all of the key components of a strong small business go into the strategic plan. And so as an investor, we look for our grantees to be able to check that box that, yes, we do have a strategic plan in place. And, we saw this during the pandemic. Strategic plans are sometimes thought of as a nice to have, and they're really a must have and a North Star when there's changes. So whether that's changes in the environment of how we all operate coming out of COVID. But then there was a lot of turnover in staff and functions and functionality as well. And so those entities that had a good strategic plan in place were able to reference it and sort of move forward in a way that that didn't mean the same as those organizations that had a blank canvas and were trying to start from scratch. So I think in 2022, we realized there was a really strong need for agencies entities, organizations, all of those that we were looking to invest in to have a strategic plan, and um, one that was current and relevant
Yeah.
to the way the world was at the time, and continues to evolve certainly, but right
Yeah,
coming out. Yeah, sorry.
I like how you say too that this idea of being an investor, and I think that more often it would really behoove organizations to think of grant giving agencies and funders in many ways as investors, right? It is an investment in you, and the ability to tell your story, tell your plan, show that
Mhm.
there is strategic thinking that exists, right? Is what you would do for an investor in a for-profit realm, and you would think that that would be appropriate and what you should do, and the same is true too in the nonprofit realm, right? It's a and not it's I will say too, the strategic plan, I mean, obviously for a Virginia Commission for the Arts grant, it's helpful, but it is also helpful when you're seeking funding outside, to corporate entities in particular. I've found that strategic plans are really helpful because it speaks to their language, and then they begin to see that you're serious and they take you seriously. They see that you're forward thinking, you're thinking about the future and the environment around you and how you respond to that environment. And so it's really important. Um,
Yeah, I'm glad you say that too, because we at the VCA consider ourselves an investor, but part of that is an understanding that those we invest in can leverage our grant, can leverage that
yeah,
investment and go out and seek additional funding, because we really exist to strengthen the arts ecosystem. And so if organizations can take our logo as a seal of approval, stamp of approval, go out into the community and the philanthropic community and be able to say, hey, we got this funding and we'd like to get more, and are worthy of more, and here's why. And so that strategic plan certainly becomes important for us, but then for others, and to say, not only do we have the strategic plan, but we have the approval of the state as well at this point.
that's great. Yeah. And I found, I've served on grant review panels for the commission before, and very often, one of the issues that would arise for organizations in that process was the lack of a strategic plan. And it was usually reflective too of the size of the organization, very often, because facilitation for these things can be expensive, professional facilitation.
Yes.
So I assume that I haven't been on a panel in a couple of years, but I assume that it was still the case. I assume, Margaret, you were responding to something that you
Yes.
were seeing in
Yes.
the application.
Yes. So the the conceptualization, ideation of this came from sitting in panels, and I take avid notes of our advisory panelists as they speak, and it kept coming up. They don't have a strategic plan. This strategic plan is weak, or this is not a strategic plan. This is a wish list, or this is a to-do list, or this is a Excel spreadsheet, or this is a few words
Yeah,
on a Word
yeah,
document. So it was a lot. It was across the board that the content, the layout, the thoughtful approach to it was differing. And I kept taking these notes, and at the end I thought, okay, well, a lack of resources is really what's the underlying issue here, is that a lot of these smaller entities or emerging organizations cannot take the time, perhaps, or the funding and dedicate it to what is usually a consultant led process, and or it's a internal, either a board member or a
yeah,
staff member taking the lead on it. And even so, even though there may be those human resources available, what is the guidebook? How are they creating that strategic plan? And if we are going to ask all of our panelists to consider the strategic plan of an arts organization, if we're going to ask our arts organizations to submit a strategic plan, let's give them the tool. Let's give them the
Yeah.
tool to do it. And so the idea came out, let's be a resource. And what does that look like? And so we partnered with Spark Mill out of Richmond, did several planning sessions, not unlike strategic planning sessions.
I was
We
curious if it looked like a strategic planning session.
Yes, it
Yeah.
did. Who is your audience? Who are you reaching? And our target audience was not our large organizations, who we know have oftentimes dedicated resources for that, but more the smaller. Can a volunteer driven organization do this? Can a emerging theater? We really looked at who would be able to take advantage of this and use this to elevate themselves, not only as operational, but also as they seek additional funding. So that was the beginning part, and we landed on this strategic planning workbook, and that would live on our website. And I'll direct your audience now. It's vca.virginia.gov, and under our resources section is the strategic planning workbook. And we wanted this to be something that no one had to reach out to us, no one had to notify us, no one had to have a special password to download, that we were able to have this live on our website for whomever this would benefit. Ideally, it's going towards those grantees in our portfolio, but it doesn't have to stop there. We really wanted
Yeah.
this to serve
Yeah.
as a resource that was available for anyone who found themselves eh, needing, wanting to refresh, refine, create, whatever the verb is, a strategic plan, and have this be a resource.
Yeah, the open source nature of this is really helpful. And again, you don't have to be in the state of Virginia to utilize this. And I've spent some time with the document, and it is thorough. And I would have loved to have had this when I was, a young theater maker starting my first theater company. It would have been extraordinarily helpful to me. And helpful to my constituents, helpful with fundraising, all the rest. And so it's an incredible resource. And I know from spending time talking to people and organizations in small rural communities, most often these organizations tend to be very small. They tend to run on a lot of volunteer labor, and the idea of taking, the idea of a strategic planning facilitation that is thorough and also is aimed towards what the investor, the funder wants to hear and see, can be really daunting. And so this is huge. So I will supply a link in the information on the podcast, as well as a follow-up blog with information about the resource, as well as a little bit of a conversation too about the importance of strategic planning, because it is really critical for growth. It's really critical for reaching your audiences and making sure that you're fulfilling your mission to the fullest that you can. Margaret, you're in the middle you're in the middle of grant reviews right now. Is this been helpful? Are you seeing more strategic plans show up in the grant review, in the grant
Yes,
applications?
yes, this has been very helpful. It's been very helpful, and and I'll just back up one thing too. We wanted to get this out as soon as possible so that um, organizations had a longer time to sit with it prior to having to submit a new strategic plan for our grant applications. And we also didn't want to just load something and send a link out. So we did a facilitation workshop that Spark Mill led, and we recorded that, and that is also still available as a resource. We have seen strategic plans that have come in better shape. I will say we're also a little bit more stringent, because now we know there is a resource. You can't say
Yeah,
to us
you can't say
anymore,
that you don't have the resources. Yeah, they've
no, we
got it
can't
now.
afford a consultant. We have no strategic plan. But you do have a strategic planning workbook that has been made available. So I think it's one of those things too that will continue. The longer it's available, the more we're so excited for you to share it in this forum. The more individuals are aware of it and educated on this workbook, the more they're likelier to use it and then continue to see. So I think in the years to come, I think we'll continue to see some really strong strategic plans. It's not for a lack of talent and knowledge and dedication. It's just, sometimes just being able to access the correct tools. And we're thrilled for anyone to have this tool in their toolbox.
Yeah, it's great. Margaret, one more time too, where folks can find that.
Yes, it's VCA, so Virginia Commission for the Arts, vca.virginia.gov, and it's under our resources tab.
Awesome. Margaret Hancock, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Small Town Big Arts. Remember to rate and review us and share with your friends. To learn more, visit us at smalltownbigarts.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Jeffrey Kirshner.